You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. 'Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, sponsored by BetUS, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Kotzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people. Anything happening today?
Yeah, no big news. No big news whatsoever. We are also joined on the show today by the president and chief executive officer of DolphinsTalk.com. He is the one and only Mike Oliva. Mike, how are you doing this evening?
President and chief executive officer. I feel like the Vince McMahon music should be behind me when that's announced. I should walk out with a strut.
No
Chairman.
chance.
No chance. That's right. Guys, I'm doing great on this slow news day we have.
Yeah,
Miami Dolphins.
Definite slow news day here on Tuesday, November 2nd, as we record the show this evening. Election day across the United States of America. So hopefully everybody's getting out there and exercising your civic duty and voting and doing all of that. And hopefully the people that you like are going to do the right things, because right now, if you are a fan of the Miami Dolphins, a lot of the people that you would like are not doing the right things at the moment. Here's what we can tell you. Obviously, listen, we're going to talk about the Buffalo game. That's what we do here on the show. We're going to absolutely talk about that game in a minute. But obviously, the big news of the day is that the Dolphins did not, in fact, end up trading for Deshaun Watson. In fact, they did not end up trading for anybody. They also did not end up trading anybody away, and we're going to get into all of that. But the big story here, of course, as it has been for months and months surrounding this team, and as this season has sort of spiraled out of control into what is now a 7-game losing streak for the Miami Dolphins, the big story sort of dominating the narrative surrounding this team is, will they or won't they, versus, when it comes to trading for Deshaun Watson. And here we are now. The trade deadline has come and gone. The Dolphins did not make the move for Deshaun Watson. But of course, that's not the end of the story. It couldn't be clean cut and dry, just like anything else involving this team. It is, of course, a bigger mess than anybody could have possibly imagined. So we all know the story. It's been reported off and on. So many stories that the Dolphins were involved with these talks for Watson. And at one point, it was reported that there was maybe even a deal in place as far as agreeing to terms on the compensation of what the agreement would be. But the problem always came down to the Dolphins wanting some sort of assurances that Watson's off the field issues, and by issues, I mean the 22 credible accusations of sexual misconduct and assault that he's been accused of, that those would not play into some sort of factor in his ability to play football moving forward. So they looked for assurances from the NFL. They didn't get any. So then the next step is they were hoping that things would somehow get cleared up, and so that they could have some clarity on what his future was going to look like. And that just never seemed to happen. And then we get the news today that evidently the Dolphins were much more involved with that process than we understand. And I should note, before I read the following statement here, that this statement does come from Tony Busby, who is the attorney for the 22 women who are accusing Deshaun Watson of sexual misconduct and assault. That this is a statement that is coming from an attorney, so therefore you do have to take it with at least a little bit of a grain of salt when you read this. But I'll read the relevant part here at the beginning, and at least the first part of this statement. But he says, Miami or Houston, wherever he goes, it doesn't change our case. Bottom line was, apparently at some point, the Dolphins wanted 22 settlements. I made it clear after talking to my clients that that wasn't going to happen, and then they lowered that number. I made that clear. That wasn't going to happen. Watson's team was trying to sell the Dolphins on some lower number, and I think that never came to pass. Then he was asked, what about the non-disclosure agreements your clients were asked to sign? To which he responded, I don't know if it came from Watson or if it came from the Dolphins. I don't know where it came from, but there was an insistence of a very, very robust non-disclosure agreement, and we pushed back on that very hard. For some of the women, that was the deal breaker. On other women, it was the compensation. Everyone was different, but there was some insistence on a non-disclosure agreement. I don't care if he gets traded or not. It's really not my thing. Obviously, there was a lot of effort on their part to get the case settled, so there could be a trade, apparently. I'm assuming at some point that will come about again. Time is on my side. I'm just going to continue to pursue the case, continue to do my due diligence on the case, and start preparing the case for hopefully a trial. The next significant event, I believe, will be February when we have the opportunity to take Mr. Watson's deposition. So there we are. On the face, it sounds like whether it was the Dolphins, whether it was the Texans, whether it was Deshaun Watson, the bottom line is you have two professional sports organizations and a professional athlete who are doing everything in their power to take these accusations and make them go away in some way so that they could focus on football, because to these organizations, the football is the only thing that matters. And this is the biggest problem that I have with this situation. And look, folks, I'm gonna be upfront, just like this episode that we did a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about all of these sort of non-football aspects of this. And I understand that people want you to focus on just the football part of this. I get that. But the thing is, at the end of the day, there are real people involved here. And it is bigger than football. I mean, you don't have to look very far to find instances of when you try to put the non-football or the non-sporting stuff and try to push it under the rug, that bad things happen. If you follow sporting news at all, you've seen what just happened recently with the Chicago Blackhawks, right? And the scandal involving Greg Aldrich and how he sexually assaulted Kyle Beach, who was a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. Well, he was in their system at the time. And then when it was brought to the attention of the front office, they pushed it under the rug and they pushed it away and they didn't do anything about it. And this poor guy's life spirals out of control. And eventually, years later, it comes back and bites everybody in the ass. Stan Bowman was the GM of the Blackhawks, had to resign. He's also no longer going to have the opportunity to be the GM of the Team USA hockey team. Joel Quenneville, 3-time Stanley Cup winner with the Chicago Blackhawks and led the Florida Panthers to what I think they were 8-0 at the time this season, has had to step away from his position because of his role in suppressing this. The non-sports stuff matters. These are real people, okay? These are real people, and whether you choose to believe those 22 people or not, the fact that there are 22 different people accusing this man of something means that his behavior is in question, okay? It's a bad situation. And there's no way that you're going to come at me and say, innocent until proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. That's nonsense, okay? And now you have what appears to be very strong evidence that the Miami Dolphins, Steve Ross, who was on the phone, it was reported by Jeff Darlington today, or was it may have been Ian Rappaport. It was Ian Rappaport today, who reported today that Steve Ross went out of his way to get permission from the Texans to speak on the phone with Deshaun Watson. He spoke to him on Monday. And so this is a problem on a number of different layers for the Dolphins. But the biggest thing is that this is a guy he's talking to Watson because he's trying to make this stuff go away so that we can focus on football. And that is an enormous problem. And there's no two ways around it. So the Miami Dolphins organization is now led at the top by Steve Ross, who is a weasel of the highest order because of this situation. At least that's the way it looks. I'm not going to stand up here and say that he definitely tried to make he tried to make all these women sign non-disclosure agreements. That's not very clear. I don't have that evidence. I can't do that. But it's at the very least clear that this is a guy who is trying to brush the problems of this player under the rug. And at this point, it almost would have been better if he would have said, you know what, we're going to sign this guy. I don't even care if he has off the field problems. It would have been less of a mess for the organization. Would have still been a PR disaster, but it would have been less of a mess than all of this that we've sat through. So, Brain, let me get your reaction. Actually, Mike, you're a guest on the show today. Let's get your reaction to this first, and then we'll let the Brain talk a little bit. But yeah, as you can tell, I'm a little bit fired up.
You're fired up, and I love it. Yeah, your last line was the thing. If you're going to trade for him, warts and all. Because why go through down this road for all these months, and you knew what you were trying to trade for. You knew about the off-the-field stuff. Trade for him, warts and all. And that's why, I felt like I was the old man screaming at the cloud. Just kill the rumor, kill the story. Even if behind the scenes you were still talking to Houston, tell them, look, we have to kill this story publicly because this is because now the worst possible outcome happened. You have a head coach who stood in front of a podium in front of the media for months, weeks, saying our quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa, our quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa, like a broken record, like a parrot. You pulled the string. Our quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa. Well, behind the scenes, the owner is trying to get permission to talk to Watson, and he finally does. Then you get to today, November 2nd, Miami doesn't trade for Watson, but it comes out the owner had been trying to talk to him, trying to pull off a deal, so it throws Tua under the bus publicly to the world. Before you could get away with, not you, in general, the you of people, well, it's rumors. We don't know if he really wants him, Ross. Now you know. Now everybody knows. There's no more speculation that the Miami Dolphins are trying. We want to see what he does on the field, Tua. Let's give him 9 more games. They already made up their mind. They don't want him. And if you're still at this point thinking if Tua balls out the next, 8-9 games, that he might be able to be here in Miami next year, they don't want him. And I've been saying it for weeks on our show. They don't want him. And now you got proof with an owner working the phones, trying to trade or trying to make a trade for a guy where it would have been better just to trade for him. Then you control him in the world of a football world. Then Ross can throw his legal team that I'm sure is very good right behind Watson to help him out. That's what he should have done, honestly, if he wants to be this involved with settlements and all that nonsense. But yeah, I think the one thing, this story, if anyone out there is still looking to their sports athletes or sports teams to be the moral compass in life, something's wrong with you. Seriously, folks, don't do this. These teams only care about, and I know in our instance, in our world, it's the Miami Dolphins. That's all we care about, but all these teams are the same way. I know there might be some teams that are a little bit better about this stuff than others, but at the end of the day, they just want to win because it's a business. And a lot of these teams, including ours, will look the other way on a lot of this stuff. And it is that's the story. A, they don't want Tua, and B, they weren't willing to trade for Watson, warts and all. But if you ignore A, you're missing the big part of the story, which is the story. They don't want Tua, period.
Brain, what are your thoughts on this whole mess?
You guys basically are saying exactly what I've been saying for the past week and a half. And I know me and Mike have been pretty much on the same page on this. And you and I, Josh, really have been on the same page as far as, having a moral issue when it comes to supporting this football team based on everything that's been going on behind the scenes. And it's looking more and more obvious. And now it's just blatant. Everybody knows that they were trying to get Watson. Essentially the deal was done. You're not having Stephen Ross talking to Deshaun Watson at that point, unless the deal is already done. And that's him trying to seal the deal by getting whatever he was trying to get out of it, whether he was trying to get, we don't know exactly what they talked about. You can make the speculation that was Stephen Ross, trying to get Deshaun Watson to, trying to influence him to get these NDAs signed. You could also come to the conclusion, you can come to the speculation that, Stephen Ross, maybe he just wanted to talk to Deshaun Watson to get a feel for whether or not he believed Deshaun Watson. Regardless of what the reason is for that conversation and what was spoken about, the bottom line is he's not having that conversation with Deshaun Watson unless that deal was already agreed to in principle. That was an attempt to seal the deal. And they decided, for whatever the reason is, not to seal the deal. And so all they've done is let this be a huge distraction, a huge embarrassment on the franchise, and they have nothing to show for it. At least if you were going to do all this and you were going at it with the philosophy of we're going to win no matter what the cost is, regardless of, we're not taking any kind of moral high ground, nothing like that. Well, then at least have the franchise quarterback that you're going out of the way to get in spite of 22 credible accusations of sexual misconduct and sexual assault. So it's basically what we've been saying. The team is morally bankrupt. It starts at the owner. Obviously, the GM, in Chris Greer, he's got his part to play in this. We don't really know. But at the end of the day, what we know is that the team was doing everything they could possibly do to get Deshaun Watson while still trying to straddle the fence and try to not make it a PR nightmare. And they can't even do that right. They can't even not have a PR nightmare when their main objective is to not have a PR nightmare. This team cannot do a damn thing right, whether it's on the football field or in the front office or to the media. They don't know what they're doing in any aspect.
It's a complete cluster everywhere you look with this team, from the front office to the product on the field to the coach and to the coach taking an hour after the game in Buffalo to come out and talk to the press. Everything is just a clown show. I mean, it's clown shoes is what it is. It's clown shoes. That's what this organization is right now. It's a clown shoes organization, and it's kind of a joke. And it gets harder and harder to support this team. And we've said it time and time again. And this is a really, really gross one. And I think that Stephen Ross at this point, I kind of owes it to the public to come out and kind of make a statement about this. He's got to do something, because that statement that Busby put out there, whether or not any of that is true, it paints Steve Ross in a very bad light. It also, the organization is in a terrible light just because of the way this entire thing has played out. It's really bad. One of the things that NFL organizations like to do is they all like to have, and whether it's coaches, officials in the front office, whether it's politicians, the big thing for these people is something called plausible deniability, right? They all want to have that ability to go, that never happened. That never happened. Yeah, you're hearing these reports. It's rumors, right? It's what many people who are like whether you want to call them the Tuanon or the whatever, the people who really love Tua, right? The Tua stans. And make no mistake, the three people on this show are not people that I would consider Tua stans. Okay, people that are going to support Tua no matter what. We'll talk about where this leaves Tua in just a moment. But you had people out there that were going, "Oh, see, I told you this never happened. It was all rumors. It was all in the media. It was all the press, right?" We got report that Ross was on the phone with Watson yesterday.
And he wanted to talk to him, and he wanted to talk to him previously, earlier, so it didn't go up to the final hour. So he wanted to do this sooner. Right.
So there is no plausible deniability. It happened. It all played out. They couldn't get it done. And I remember a conversation, Brayden, maybe you and I had this when the rumors first came out that Watson was maybe unhappy in Houston, right? And I think we had this conversation about, well, maybe Watson's available. And we said at the time that the thing would be to kick the tires behind the scenes and try to find out, and maybe this is a thing that you can get done. And if you're going to do that, the thing to do is to make sure that that doesn't bleed out into the public and show that you've lost all confidence in your starting quarterback. And, well, months later, the whole thing is a train wreck, and now it's happened. And so now you're here with Tua, and who is the Dolphins starting quarterback for the rest of the season until we get to January, February, March, April. Because, folks, I'm gonna say it right now. You think this is over? I got news for you.
Spoiler.
I got news for you. Deshaun will come out tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, but it's coming. This thing is going on. It's going to happen in January, February, March, April. We're not at the end of this, no matter what. This whole thing is going to be a mess. And in the meantime, Tua is still the quarterback. So where I sit, and Mike, I'll get your opinion about this in a second, but from where I sit as a fan of the Dolphins, with 9 more games to go. We're not even halfway through this godforsaken football season already. We've got 9 games left. But the good news is this is hump week, right? This is hump week. This is game 9. We're on the downward slope after this, right? But here's where you are. If you're a Miami Dolphin fan, you better hope that Tua goes out there and lights the world on fire for the final 9 games of this season. And not necessarily because, maybe the Dolphins will have a change of heart and decide that they want to roll with Tua, because as you say, Mike, indications are pretty clear that they're ready to move on from him. But if he sets the world on fire in these last, 9 games of the season, at that point, you can at least then hope to turn around and get back at least a first round pick for this guy when you I think imminently end up trying to trade him away, which is what I think ends up, whether it's the organization saying we're going to move on from him, whether it's Tua demanding a trade. I just think, and maybe I'm completely wrong about this. I know that Tua is a very religious guy, so he's a very forgiving person, and maybe he's willing to look past this entire mess. But I mean, you've got an organization that has taken a dump all over you pretty publicly, and how you turn that around 2 years into your NFL career and be like, you know what, it's all good. That, I don't know, as a professional athlete, that puts you in a pretty bad spot. So I think that you got to go out there and you got to hope that Tua balls out so that you can turn around and get a good return for him when you eventually move off of him. That's at least how I see it going forward. I know you, Mike, you've made it very clear that you truly believe this organization is done with him and it doesn't matter what he does on the field. And I think I can largely agree with that in a lot of ways. But so what do you do? What are you looking here? What are you looking for the final 9 weeks of the season where now Tua is your definitive QB1, at least for 9 more weeks?
Well, here's the question, and this is kind of ironic. 5 of the next 6 games are at home. So this ought to be a great home stretch for the Miami Dolphins to hear their fans probably boo them out of the stadium every week. Here's the thing with Tua. It comes down to this. Even if the owner fires Chris Grier, even if the owner fires Brian Flores, prior to today, you could have made the case they're going to bring in people who still believe in Tua, think he's the guy. We can quote unquote fix it to make him the quarterback we all thought we were going to get coming out of Alabama. Now it's known the owner doesn't even want him. So I don't know how you salvage this. And for Tua, I mean, look, yeah, if he throws for like 400 yards each week and like 3 or 4 touchdowns each week, I'm sure there's something that can be done to make nice and say, let's be honest, he ain't doing that. Okay, he ain't doing that. He's not that guy. He ain't having that many games in a row, or even out of the next 9 games, 6, 7, or 8 of those games where he's throwing 300 yards plus, 4 touchdowns, 3. It ain't happening. He ain't that guy. So I don't know how you salvage this. I think he's done. And I think here's the next question too. Brian Flores he's got a lot of his own problems, because they're 1-7. But this guy, he's going to be asked about it. You stood up in front of the media all these weeks, all these months. Every time we asked you about Watson, you said Tua is our guy. Did you know that the owner was behind your back trying to call Watson? And if you thought Brian Flores was uncomfortable answering all these Watson questions, he's going to be shaking like a dog trying to shit a peach pit. He ain't going to know how to answer that, because he ain't going to want to answer that, but he's going to be asked it until he does. So you better have a good prepared answer. But I don't know. They don't want Tua. I mean, this is Jim Harbaugh, Tony Soprano 2.0. Well, not Tony. Yeah, Tony Sparano, not Tony Sparano. Tony Sparano 2.0. You have a coach, yet you're trying to get another coach. You have a quarterback that you took number 5 overall a year ago, and you're on the phone talking to another quote-unquote franchise quarterback trying to lure him to your team. guys, it's on brand. Same old Dolphins. I mean, there's nothing. And why would he want to come back to a?
I mean, well, we've said it before, and I'll say it again. They're the same old Dolphins, and they've same old Dolphins this entire situation because they ended up not getting the franchise quarterback that they were trying to get, and they've also alienated their rookie quarterback in the process. It's a mess. So now they're going to try to pursue the situation in the spring where they'll either pay more than what they were trying to get away with now for Watson, or they'll get outbid by somebody else and end up with nothing.
Here's something else.
Brain.
Too. Yeah, well,
go ahead,
one
Mike.
quick thing. And you were talking about the fan base who, a portion of the fan base who thought this was all bullshit. It was all rumors. Everyone's making it up. That portion of the fan base, I am calling willfully ignorant. They know this story was true. They just chose to ignore it. They are willfully ignorant about this. They bashed Charles Robinson. They bashed every reporter for months, called them names, put them on, made memes and all that stuff. All those guys did not deserve what they got from certain aspects of social media because they were all right. They were right the entire time. They were reporting 100% facts. Today, they were all proven right. And that portion of the fan base, we're all fans of this team, and it's okay to be critical of the team at times, like now, but don't be willfully ignorant and put your head in the sand and ignore what is staring you in the face.
Brain, where are you at right now when it comes to Tua and what he's got left for the 9 games this season?
Well, I'm going to start with what Brian Flores' carefully crafted answer will be to the questions about did he know that Stephen Ross was doing this behind the scene and that they were trying to get Deshaun Watson behind the scenes. They're going to ask them the question. He's going to look them dead in the eyes and he's going to say, Tua is our quarterback.
Yeah. Well, talk about Mr. Plausible Deniability, Brian Flores. He's still got it. He's still got plausible deniability when it comes to all this. But go ahead, Brain. Continue.
Yeah. Well, I think I look, in all likelihood, I agree. This marriage is not one that can last. But I think there's been reasons to be encouraged from what you've seen out of Tua. And the fact is you're going to get 9 games now, assuming he stays healthy, because that's a big if as well. I mean, if he gets hurt and misses any kind of time at this point, that could be a death knell to him having any opportunity to save his job as the starting quarterback of the Dolphins. But if he goes out there and plays well, are the Watson rumors going to go away? No, they're not going to go away. But Watson, if Watson chooses to fight this all the way down to the end, it could get uglier for Watson. And if after all of this, what has ultimately caused it to not happen is Stephen Ross saying, we don't want the PR nightmare. If it gets uglier and Tua plays well, then I think that will incentivize them enough to get them off of Watson. The problem is that there are more options than just Deshaun Watson. And maybe it's not a problem.
That's true.
It's just a fact is when you get to the offseason, there will be other options other than Tua and Deshaun Watson. Aaron Rodgers has called it, the one last dance in Green Bay. Personally, I would much rather have Aaron Rodgers than Deshaun Watson, especially considering all of this, off the field stuff that you don't have to deal with Aaron Rodgers. That said, there's no guarantee that Aaron Rodgers wants to come here. I don't know any quarterback in their right mind that is trying to win a Super Bowl that would look at what the Dolphins are right now, both in the front office and on the field, and think, yeah, that's where I want to be. So I don't know how great you'd feel about getting Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, you could also try to trade or trade up or draft a quarterback in the first round. This happens to be, according to the experts, I mean, we don't really know, but according to the experts, this is one of the worst quarterback classes coming out this coming season. So this wouldn't be the year that you'd necessarily want to draft a quarterback in the first round. Maybe another veteran, somebody like, Matt Stafford became available last season, and he obviously, is doing great things in LA now. So, if there's another quarterback of that ilk that happens to be available and they feel like gives them a better chance to win than Tua, then certainly that becomes another option. I don't think, look, now, I think you have to really legitimately, from this point on, continue to evaluate what Tua's done, because he's been fine this year. And I think there is, when you look at the type of player that he is and the type of quarterback that he projects to be, you have to be patient to at least to some extent, unless you have an obvious option that is better in front of you. This whole Deshaun Watson thing reeks of desperation, and the Dolphins should not be desperate in this situation.
Right.
So I think you have to be, to some extent, patient when it comes to Tua. But that said, you can't be a Tua stan. You can't just say, well, he's young, he'll get better. You can't just say that. You can't just say he's young and give him a pass game after game after game. You have to continue to see that development and growth as a starting quarterback, so that you go into next year feeling confident that you can win, not just next year with Tua, but long-term with Tua as your starting quarterback. And I've said from day one, regardless of this rumor, regardless of record, the most important thing to come out of this season was the evaluation of Tua, whether or not you can come out of this season and feel like he is your franchise quarterback for the next decade. We're not there yet, but I think, honestly, he's trending upward. I don't think he played as poorly as some are making it out to be, as far as the way he played in this last game against Buffalo. I don't think he played nearly as well as some of the people made it out to be that he played in the two games previous. Mr. B+ over there to my left. But I think that overall, Tua has played quarterback at a C+, B- level thus far this season. He's shown significant improvement over what he was last year. And we're still, he started 13, 14 games?
14 games. Yep.
So, that's good enough for me to at least have some encouragement and some positivity to think that he could be the starting quarterback. But you have to have an open mind. And then as far as, the football side of things and Tua's future and whether or not it's already predetermined that they don't want him, well, I think it's clear that Brian Flores and Chris Greer don't want him. And I think the football guys told Stephen Ross, this isn't the guy. So Stephen Ross said, well, then we need to get this Deshaun Watson thing done. I don't think Stephen Ross is necessarily making football decisions, but Stephen Ross is absolutely going to sign off or not sign off on a deal like that. And so I think it came from the football guys, and Stephen Ross said, okay, but we need to get these cases settled, because otherwise it's a PR nightmare. So the way the season is going, it doesn't look like Brian Flores is. Look, if they bring both of these guys back,
wouldn't shock me.
It would. And that's the sad thing.
At this point in time, no.
But there is a reasonable chance that both of those, that they do clean house. And if they do clean house and they bring in a GM, and Stephen Ross doesn't do the stupid thing where he says, well, we're going to bring in a GM, but you have to be okay with Tua as our quarterback, which would be really hilarious after he just had this conversation with Deshaun Watson. So I don't think that that's going to happen. If he brings in a new GM, then you let the new GM make the decision. And that's that. And so if that new GM comes in and they say, well, maybe I'm not 100% sold on Tua, but I don't want to give up 4 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, and I don't want to give up whatever it's going to cost to get Aaron Rodgers, and this draft class sucks, so let's ride with Tua for one more year and use it as an evaluation year. I would not be surprised at all if that happens. And at the same time, I would not be surprised if Tua ends up, being pretty good. But at the end of the day, what would surprise me in the absolute least, because it would be the ultimate same old Dolphins thing, is that he's going to be in that Tannehill zone where every year we're going to have the same conversation where we said, well, he was a little bit better this year. I think we need to give him another year. And then before you know it, he's been around for 7 or 8 years and you haven't won anything. He just needs a better
offensive line. He just needs a better running back. He just needs this. It's like he needs the perfect team around him to have any success. And you're never going to have the perfect team around him. Every time he makes a bad play, all you hear from a certain segment of the fan base is, yeah, but it was his fault. Yeah, but he was unblocked. It's every excuse of every bad play. You're never going to have a perfect team around him. Yes, it could be slightly better than what we currently have. I understand that. But, yeah, we're in the Tannehill zone. And I got a question for you, too, because I see a lot of people now on social media kind of comparing to Jared Goff. And I think that's a good comparison because Goff, when he was with the Rams, and the Rams were good, he took them to a Super Bowl, but that team was loaded. When the Rams weren't so loaded, you couldn't win with them. Now you put him on the Lions with nothing, and he can't win a game. I think that's our quarterback with Tua. If you put him on a loaded team, yeah, he's great. But if you put him on a team that isn't, has everything perfect around him, this is what you get.
Well, and here's the thing. We've talked about it on this show before. You can win a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer as your quarterback, right? You can win a Super Bowl with the game manager at quarterback, but you need to have the rest of the team around you be gangbusters. And that's the question as far as how this team is being built right now. Is this, and we still don't know the answer to the question with Tua, like whether or not he can be a quarterback that is capable of lifting his team up. He's shown signs. That touchdown drive that he had when the Dolphins went down 2 scores to the Bills, and he put that big touchdown drive together, and he had that big 4th down conversion with the big long pass to Gesicki down the field. That was a huge drive for Tua Tagovailoa. And that was exactly the thing that so many people accuse this guy of not being able to do, is to answer the bell with a big drive. And he did it there. Okay. And then, we know how the rest of the game played out. It didn't go well. And largely in that game, it was not a great performance from Tua, but he was able to answer the bell there. So he has shown signs that he's capable of doing a lot of things. And then Tua, of course, is as close as Tua is ever going to come to throwing people under the bus in his post-game press conference. He took some shots at the play calling and said, like, this is what I've got. This is what I've been given. And, and then that leads to another concern that a lot of people have about Tua, which is that he's not this alpha dog, that he's not going to get into people's faces and challenge authority. But it's really hard to do that in his defense. It's really hard to do that when you're playing for an organization that clearly doesn't want you to be the quarterback, at least in this moment in time. But, so to Aaron's point, the evaluation is still very much in progress with Tua Tagovailoa. At least where I'm standing, I'm not ready to say that I'm completely convinced that he's not the answer. But I'm certainly, and I'm certainly not convinced that he absolutely is the answer. I'm hoping that by the end of this season, I will be able to answer that question one way or another. And the fact of the matter is, and as Deshaun Watson of all people has shown us, that you can be a very, very, very good quarterback on a very, very, very bad football team. It is possible, right? And so if Tua is able to put something together these final 9 games of the season and really show us that we can see more consistently the Tua that we saw for the bulk of the game against Atlanta and the bulk of the game against Jacksonville, and we can see more performances like that and see less of the god-awful decision-making and trying to, no matter what, make the big play that ends up in the horrible turnover. If we can see more of that develop over the course of these final 9 games, I think you're at a situation where his evaluation is a lot better, right? And a lot of people are like, and they say it in a derogatory way about Tua. They're like, his ceiling is Andy Dalton, is what they're telling you, right? But Andy Dalton, what'd you say, Aaron?
I said I don't agree with that.
I don't either.
Yeah, I think he's certainly better than what Andy Dalton can be. But
He's
let us
already
also
Andy
not
Dalton.
forget. But let's not forget that Andy Dalton led 12 and 13 win teams to the playoffs. They didn't win football games in the playoffs, and there's a whole other conversation about how the Bengals are cursed and all of that. But I think that this guy's ceiling is yet to be determined, right? And I'm not gonna slag him off. I'm not going to dismiss him as he's done. He's useless. There's nothing that we can get out of this situation. I'm not going to make that assessment. I know for a fact that there are people who believe that, and they will loudly tell you that they believe that. And listen, this whole thing has been about the Deshaun Watson thing. The Watson thing has nothing to do with Tua as a player. We've been on record as saying when the Watson thing first came out, it was a great idea. Right. And I was totally on board if that was something that the Dolphins wanted to do, was trade for Watson. But then, all of the accusations came out, and then it completely changed the whole outlook of that situation. Right. And that made the move less appealing. So same thing now. If the Dolphins decided that they wanted to make a push for Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, then, are there better ways to use those resources given what this team is right now? Probably. But can you really argue against the team making a move for a proven franchise quarterback? I don't know that you can argue that. So I don't know. I disagree that he's Jared Goff at this point in time. I think I'm not saying that isn't ultimately what he's going to end up being. I just think at this point in time, what his ceiling is not defined. Bran, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. You can't define a guy's ceiling I could, if you really want to know, I could sit here and I could say his ceiling is Drew Brees, but that doesn't mean that he's ever going to reach his ceiling. To say that his ceiling is Andy Dalton, he's already Andy Dalton. He's already Jared Goff. Will he be Andy Dalton, Jared Goff 5 years from now? I don't know. Maybe. Will he not be? He could be Drew Brees. He could be Russell Wilson. We don't know. Do I feel confident that he's going to hit his? No, I think he's probably going to end up somewhere in between, because that's what the odds would say. But to definitively write a guy's career when he's made 14 starts with the train wreck that is this franchise, with this awful offensive line, and I'm not going to sit here and just make excuses for him, because he certainly has – there's certainly things of his own volition that are part of the problem. You've mentioned his decision-making, his propensity to have really bad turnovers at really inopportune times. But let's be real. This is an awful offensive line. He got thrown in last year where half the locker room didn't even want him to be the quarterback. The offensive coordinator that was brought in last year was brought in specifically for Ryan Fitzpatrick. So there was already a faulty marriage there. And then you come in this year, and instead of getting him a legitimate offensive coordinator, you give him two guys who can't play offense, who have never been play callers, who have never been offensive coordinators. You make them co-offensive coordinators in a completely unprecedented move. And then to make it further unprecedented, you have a third guy in your quarterback coach calling the plays. So this team has no idea what they're doing at the quarterback position. And making everything worse is that he also has to deal with the constant noise that the franchise doesn't want him, because they're going out there and they're talking about trading for Deshaun Watson. So, look, none of those things excuse poor play, but they are facts. They are part of the issue that is at play here and need to be taken into account when you are evaluating the overall picture that is Tua's development. Overall, I think you'd be crazy to look at this and say he's not trending upward. The question is, how high is that ceiling? He has obvious limitations when it comes to his arm strength, but he would not be the first quarterback to have an outstanding career without a really strong arm. His accuracy is elite. His mobility is better than average. His pocket presence is better than average. His footwork is good. The decision-making stuff he is a young quarterback. It's crazy to believe that of all of the things, the decision-making is going to be the one thing that is stunted. The decision-making should be the thing that projects to improve the most as he gains experience as a quarterback. And so when you take into account all of those other factors, I still feel like Tua can be a very good quarterback in this league. Now, the injury thing, I think that is a legitimate concern because it's happened to him every year at every level. So, that is a major concern. And will he ever? I think he is a smaller margin for error to hit that high ceiling because he doesn't have the elite arm that some of the other NFL prospects or young quarterbacks do. But that doesn't mean that he can't get there. So I think it's crazy to write him off or determine what his ceiling is based off of 14 games. I think there's still a high variance of things that can happen. But that said, if you're telling me, oh, you could get Aaron Rodgers or you can get Russell Wilson, well, there's very little variance there. So if you're telling me, oh, there are better ways to spend your resources for a franchise that hasn't had a good quarterback in over 20 years, no, there are no better resources. If you're considering trading 3 first-round picks for a sexual predator, then you can give away 4 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. I'm sorry, there's no better way to use those resources.
But correct me if I'm wrong. The Rodgers, he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year, right? Isn't his contract up?
No, I think he's under contract, but they told him that we'll work with you after this year if you want to go. Or it was some like verbal type agreement, like if you come back and if you take this small raise after this year, we'll just reevaluate everything. I think the problem with Rodgers is he wants to be on the West Coast. And now the one thing that could entice him to Miami is we know with Rodgers, he never gets along with any of his coordinators or head coaches. You could tell him, hey, you come into Miami, you pick the offensive staff, we'll run what you want. Because, I mean, it can't be any worse. But I don't think he wants to come to the East Coast. I think he wants to be on the left coast, and I don't see him. Wilson, I think that's a much stronger possibility because I think Seattle might blow it up after this year because they're going to have a rough year, it looks like. I think that's more of a realistic possibility. And after that, then you're talking down a cut and tier with guys of, Nick Foles and all those guys.
At that point, if it's not one of those two guys, it's not
Matt
a franchise
Ryan
quarterback.
Right now too. I would take Matt Ryan.
Yeah, but
I think Matt Ryan is a legitimate possibility.
Matt Ryan could be a legitimate possibility if they fix the rest of the team around him. But look at Matt Ryan behind that offensive line in Atlanta. It's a disaster.
They have to fix the team regardless of who the quarterback is. So
no,
you have to
obviously.
Yeah. So you have to put that into the equation. Look, I think with Tua, it comes down to this. And, Aaron Amir, if they keep Flores and Greer, which I think is a better than 50-50 chance, even though this is probably, I said it weeks ago, a 3 to 6 win season. I think we're getting closer to 3 wins than 6 at this point. I think it's somewhere. If they keep those two, I don't know how they bring back Tua because there's that's now if they move on and they bring in someone else and they want to keep them, that's a whole different story. They probably could smooth that over. But if they ride another year with Flores and Greer, which I think is a very strong possibility, that's where it gets really messy because how do you bring this kid back after today? November 2nd, 2021 is a date we're going to be talking about for a long time.
Well, let me throw something else at you.
Well, let me just say this.
Okay.
Because if that happens and Flores and Greer are brought back, that is exactly the type of thing that will cause Tua to go to his agent and say, hey, I want out.
Yeah,
that's exactly the type of, if they cleaned house and they brought in somebody new, I don't think Tua would have much of a reason to demand a trade, nor would he have much of a leg to stand on it. But if they bring back the coach and the GM that clearly haven't been in his corner, Flores clearly wasn't in his corner last year and was basically forced to put him in because Chris Greer said we needed to get a look at him. So they forced him in there, even though Fitzpatrick was playing well. And obviously Chris Greer was trying to make the trade for Watson. So if those two guys are back, then you know that he knows that he's not wanted and he's got to demand a trade.
Let me post something to you guys here. Okay. So when the Greer Flores era started, right, and they made the move, they brought in Josh Rosen, ahead of the season with the tanking year, right? And there was this whole conversation about the success of this regime is riding entirely on whether or not this quarterback that they draft after this season turns out to be the guy. We remember this conversation. This was very much the narrative, right? And I think that narrative is accurate. And so now we're in this situation where the Dolphins are 1-7. And Tua is the guy that, like, they've clearly decided that this isn't the guy, right? So they were desperate to try to bring in somebody else. Now we've got a situation where if Tua plays really, really well for the final 9 games of this season, is there a world where Tua plays really, really well this season and actually ends up saving the job of Chris Greer and Brian Flores, versus if Tua completely flames out and is and turns out to be a disaster for the rest of the season, or maybe not even a disaster, but just plays kind of mediocre football that, is just like whatever for the rest of the season. How do you, and when the team finishes 2-15 or 3-14, how do you justify at that point turning around and go, you know what? These guys deserve another shot at this.
This is why Chris Greer should have been fired 4 weeks ago, because of this exact scenario, because we've seen enough. And at the end of the day, if Chris Greer makes the trade for Watson, then everybody's saying, oh, Chris Greer made this great trade. And now, look, now we just need to wait and see what this team looks like with Watson. So he did that to save his career. But if Tua somehow turns it around, then all of a sudden that saves Chris Greer's career. No, the guy has been awful, and it hasn't just been the quarterback position. Because if the rest of the team was good, then the team would not be 1-7 right now. Tua is not that the team is 1-7. But yes,
I've heard
that is exactly what is going to happen, by the way. That is exactly what is. Mike said we got 5 out of 6 games coming up at home.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a soft part of the schedule. Now, granted, I've been saying that for weeks, and we keep losing. but this now that the Watson thing is in the rear view, this is the time for us to rack up the meaningless wins, save some jobs, put some makeup on a pig so that we can be excited going into next season, just to watch the same damn thing happen again with the same cast of characters.
Right. And here's the thing. You've got really optimistic Dolphin fans. The Dolphin fans that are like, oh, you got to support the team no matter what. You got to blah, 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 blah. Rah, rah. I refuse to say, even a slightly critical word about the organization. All this team needs is a really great baller stud tackle. That's what we really need, is just a stud tackle. And to that fan, whoever it is out there, I ask you this. After what you have seen from this organization and its inability to evaluate talent, particularly when it comes to offensive line play, what tells you that Chris Greer deserves another shot at trying to find a stud tackle? What tells you, what evidence are you working on that this guy has even the faintest clue what he's doing when it comes to that?
You just got to spend money there. You got to enough with the drafting offensive linemen. They suck at
this point. Yes,
the only good offensive lineman, the only good left tackle that they've had,
they traded.
Yeah, no, they signed Brandon Albert. Well, I'm saying the only one that they actually acquired. They signed they spent money on it.
Yeah.
So that's the route that they have to go. Whatever it costs, it's going to be a no-brainer decision. They're going to overspend on it. It's not necessarily going to be a great value but it's what they're going to need, and it's going to be a no-brainer decision that they need to spend money on a left tackle.
So
they play.
Go ahead, Mike.
This is amazing. We are at November 2nd. They play one road game between now and Christmas Day. One. Between now the day after Christmas or 2 days they play against the Saints. But between November 2nd and Christmas, they have one road game. They're going to be home the entire time for games, and they have a weekend there to buy and stuff. But whatever. They're home the entire time. So there's that. And here's the thing. And I said this Sunday on the postgame show, if they traded for Watson today, you could have made the case. Well, Flores and Greer made this bet. They must have a plan in place. So it's tough to see them moving on from him, because why would you let him make this big move and then get rid of him to throw this mess of a quarterback situation with legal issues and no draft picks on somebody else? You couldn't. The fact they didn't trade for him, if it were me, I'd fire them tomorrow. I'd fire them both, because now it's like, well, we don't have Watson now. I can have someone else talk about trading for him in March and April. I don't need you guys for that anymore. Bye-bye. But they won't do that, because I don't think they're moving on from me.
There's a problem with that logic, is that the foundation of that logic is that there's a plan in place.
Well, that's exactly. But that's the thing.
Right.
You know, if they move on from both of them, who's going to want to come here? Because the same issue they had with Flores, they were turned down for interviews with Vic Fangio. He goes, I don't want to talk to you guys. Like, Vic Fangio last time around refused to. I mean, this is Vic Fangio. Who the hell is he? To turn down anybody for a head coaching interview. Like, nobody's going to want to work for Ross. Nobody of any credibility is going to want this job. You're going to be getting, you know, guys wet behind the ears, never been in that type of role before, probably both for general manager and for head coach. And you're not going to get a proven guy here in either spot, because nobody wants this mess. And nobody wants to work with this owner who screws it up more times than he gets it right.
He screws it up, and he seems to have absolutely no
oblivious.
He's completely oblivious to how he is perceived, and which makes sense. He's a billionaire. That's kind of how they exist, right? They exist on this other plane of existence where they're completely oblivious to how regular people function, right? But he's, he doesn't have any idea what he's doing when it comes to football. And that's been made abundantly clear over and over again. And so he trusts these other people who are within the organization, who are close in, what this organization needs. And our good friend Angry Al, who's not in the comments tonight, has been advocating for this for years. And we've advocated for it as well. We need somebody to be the owner of this team who has at least some kind of football sense. I don't need them to be Jerry Jones. I need them to have some kind of idea, some kind of concept of this is how you build a winner. This guy seems to have, what's that?
It ain't going to be the next guy. I'll tell you that.
No,
right. And
that's not what you need. What you need, sure, you could have that and that would be fine. But what you really need is you need an owner that is literally just a pocketbook and says, I don't know anything about football. I'm going to hire people who do, and I'm going to stay the fuck out of the way.
Oh, we got an F-bomb.
That is what you need to do, because you could talk all you want about, your owner needs to know about football. Well, how's that working out for Jerry Jones? Because that ain't working. You know, how did it work out? I mean, sure, it worked out for Al Davis in like the 70s and the early 80s, but the Raiders didn't win anything, you know, with Al Davis for years and years and years, because at the end of the day, if your owner is too involved, it becomes a problem. And the problem with Stephen Ross is he's the worst of all of it, because he's meddlesome and he doesn't know what he's doing with football. So it's the worst case scenario. It's like Daniel Snyder.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of ownership.
Do you think we're getting a letter, a press release from Stephen Ross in Comic Sans font talking about, you know, his thoughts on the entire pursuit of Deshaun Watson, like Dan Snyder did?
Just stay quiet and go away.
Oh, that's not what Snyder. That was Gilbert. That was the guy from the Cavs.
Yeah. I was talking about the Redskins.
The Washington football team, please.
Everyone in Miami loves to compare everything to the Heat, because the Heat have had success down there. Pat Riley, you know, they just let Pat Riley run the show.
Every part of that organization is competent. Yes. Every single part of it.
If you're Mr. Ross and you want to move on, you want to, you know, once again start over, but which needs to be done. But if that's what you want to do, you need to find your Pat Riley essentially. And there's a name. He's a little bit older, so he's not going to want to coach. But he's very well connected, and he knows a lot of people in the league. He hasn't been out of the league that long. Pay Tony Dungy whatever the hell he wants. You hire the GM, you hire the coach, you run my football team, and just tell me how much you need and tell me where to write the checks. Now, it doesn't have to be him per se. I would have him on the short list, but someone like that who's well respected can bring an air. Like, it is kind of like the Parcells thing, but I think you're not going to get the Parcells ego and all the bluster of Parcells. So I get it. It's that kind of setup. And it kind of is the same kind of setup with Mike Tannenbaum, but that setup isn't necessarily bad. He's got to have the right person. And I think Tony Dungy, and if it's not him, again, someone else like that but let's just talk about him for an example. Let Tony Dungy go, look, you run this damn thing. You fix it. You tell me how much you need. You hire the GM. You hire the coach. You tell me about the quarterback, and I'm done. I know we've tried this before and it hasn't worked, but you got to keep trying. I mean, you can't just quit. I mean,
the fact of the matter is that the Parcells thing kind of worked for a little bit. And if you remember,
if you would have took Matt Ryan, it would have worked.
Well, it depends what you believe as far as his reasons for leaving. If you believe that he left because he realized that he didn't have a quarterback and he screwed up that number one pick, then okay, then it didn't work. But I think a lot of people believe that he was hired and he got that job and took that job because he really had a good feel and a good relationship with Wayne Huizenga. And then Wayne Huizenga sold the team to Stephen Ross. And as soon as Stephen Ross took over, he started doing all of this stupid crap with the orange carpet and the celebrity minority owners and making it a whole sideshow. And that really turned Parcells off. And he was out of here in a couple of years. And since then, that really left, a clown show that has not been replaced since Parcells left. And I'm not going to sit here and deify Parcells, but look, the Tony Dungy thing, hey, look, that might be a fantasy land, but man, what a fantasy land to live in, to think that the Dolphins could go back to being a classy organization, because you couldn't be classier than Tony Dungy. I would support that move.
You need someone like that, though, to sort of just run the football side of this and make all the decisions. But look, I don't know. I mean, but someone like him, not necessarily him per se, he'd probably be at the top of the list in my eyes. But they need to do something because the current setup ain't working. They gave these guys a piece of the kingdom, and they failed. And I take away the piece of the kingdom.
Too much promoting from within, because obviously within is where the rot is. The rot is inside the organization. You've got a clean house. You got
open the windows, let the stink out.
The Dolphins need a football enema. They need to get cleaned out of all of this nonsense that is inside of the organization right now. They gotta get this whole thing cleaned up. It's a disaster. It's a mess. And listen, we're going long here already tonight. The Dolphins also lost to the Bills last week, 26-11, in one of their better defensive performances of the season, at least for half of the game. But listen, if we're this far into it, you know what happened on Sunday. They lost. It was the perfect summation of everything that is wrong with this Dolphins team. The players didn't know what they were doing. They're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. That's a coaching problem. I don't know what else to say. That's also a little bit of an indictment of the quarterback, that they're breaking the huddle and he's not out there making sure that everybody knows where to be. That's a little bit on Tua. He's the field general out there. He's got to do that. He's got to make sure that people know what they're doing. But I mean, that drive at the end of the first half when the Dolphins had the opportunity, that fumble where they just didn't know where they were, and Gesicki's in motion and they snap the ball and it's a fumble and they lose the opportunity to score. They had an opportunity to go in. Everybody talks about how what's that middle eight, right? The middle 8 minutes, 4 minutes at the end of the first half, 4 minutes at the beginning of the second half. The Dolphins had the opportunity to go in at the end of the first half and get the points. Then they get the ball back in the second half, try to get more points and take advantage, right? Play smart football against a really good team that is not having a great game. And granted, part of the reason they're not having a great game is because your defense showed up in the first half, right? You had the opportunity. You had an opportunity to do something. And what do you do? What do you do? You do the same thing that Stephen Ross did. You take a shit right on the floor.
But I mean, it's coaching. It really is. I mean,
totally.
And you mentioned we're going long here. It's something that the Dolphins don't do until they're down by 3 scores, is go long. So this team needs, like you said it perfectly. You summed it up. The team needs a football enema. That's what this organization needs. They need to clean out the crap. I mean, they need to clean out the colon that is this front office and this entire organization and this entire setup, and completely clean out, because it's really unbelievable that they haven't figured this out yet, that they've been in this wallowing in this mediocrity for over 20 years. And then you say, well, when's the last time they cleaned house? I really don't know that they've ever cleaned house. I mean, what was it? Like, was it when they fired Wannstedt to bring in Saban?
That was one. I mean, Shula to Jimmy was a pretty good house cleaning. It wasn't everybody though, but it was a lot of the people. But yeah, Wannstedt to Saban was a house, because Saban, it was his way and no other way. So yeah, that was one. Yeah, those are probably the last big two. And that's going back a while.
Yeah, that's like 15 years.
15 for Saban, yeah. Even longer for Jimmy. That's a lot. I mean, Jimmy, that's like 20 years. That's like 25 years ago.
Listen, for the longest time, those of us who live in, who are from South Florida, who are fans of South Florida sports teams, have said that the Dolphins are the price we pay for being able to cheer for the Miami Heat.
I don't even like the NBA, so it doesn't work for me.
I mean, well, and listen, for me, in my life, I have been a very, very fortunate sports fan. Okay. And I have my teams are, kind of from all around. I'm like half got Chicago interests, half got South Florida interests. Every single one of my teams, of the teams that I support, has won a championship. I mean, every single one of the teams that I support has won a championship in the last 10 years, with the exception of the Miami Dolphins, who've not won a championship since what was it? 78, 73. Last time they won it. Last time they won a Super Bowl.
74.
I mean, I'm right there.
They haven't been back since 85.
I root for the Yankees. I've seen the Yankees win more than I ever need them to see in my lifetime. So if they ever never win again, I'm fine as a Yankee fan. I've seen the Rangers win the Cup at least once. Good enough for me to the day I die. I've seen the Syracuse Orange. I don't know. Whatever. I've seen them win a national championship college basketball.
You saw them play football.
One out of that school in either of the big two sports, I was good. Saw it in basketball. Don't care. I mean, it's fine. So I don't care about the NBA. So the only team that's let me down consistently is this team. And, this and today with that report of Ross talking to Watson, settle cases and everything from the lawyer, I think I got to start a low-carb, low-sugar diet, because I refuse to be dead by the time this team wins a championship, and I'm going to have to live a very long time. Now, look, we were 1-7 coming into today, and we're still 1-7, so I was going to have to live a long time anyways. But after this, I think this is just as messy. I mean, I didn't know how this story could get worse, and it did. That's the sad part. It did. They found a new low.
So here we are. The Dolphins are 1-7. Staring at another 9 games somehow that we're going to get through this season. I don't know how that's going to happen, but we're going to, and we're going to continue to evaluate, and we're going to continue to figure out. I mean, at this point, all you can do is go, who on this team is a piece that is worth keeping and who is a piece that is not. But first, I want to share this. I want to share this amazing tweet from Barry Jackson. So this was in right after the trade deadline came and went, and Dolphins made no trades before today's 4 p.m. NFL trade deadline. He goes on to say, though the Dolphins reportedly got calls on Devontae Parker, they wanted to keep him. There was no attempt to purge veterans for draft picks. The Dolphins believe their roster was built to win now, even though they haven't to this point this season.
What the hell are they watching every week?
They're built to win now. They're built to win now in week 9 against the Houston Texans.
We were built for this.
We're built for this.
With Austin Ryder.
Hashtag stronger together.
With Austin Jackson.
With Greg Manns.
Now with who? They got no linebackers that are worth anything.
You got Duke Riley.
You got a couple safeties who are promising, but they're very young. And I'm not even piling on them because they're so young. You can live with the growing pains. But what roster are they looking at?
Do you know You know what the most same old Dolphins thing is about this roster? Jason Sanders.
Yeah,
You got this great kicker.
and they pay
Right?
him, he stinks.
You're going to sign him up. Big contract. And now he's just a mediocre kicker.
That you're paying for, yeah.
You're paying him you're paying millions of dollars to Jason Sanders to, you have no concept of whether or not he's actually going to make a field goal anymore. You're paying $10 million to Will Fuller to sit on the sideline that refused to come off of IR with a broken finger.
I got a question for you. Pop quiz. Noah Igbenogany was active this week. How many snaps did he see on special teams and did he see on defense as an active player?
I didn't see him at all.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't recall.
0.
Yeah,
he was active, but didn't see the field. Even on a stinking punt to run down a punt, he didn't even 0 snaps played. Hunter Long, that's another genius pick in round 3 of all rounds. Inactive again.
Yep.
So this team's built to win now. What the
built to
hell
win
are
now?
they looking at?
Built to win now. What are they built to win at? Poker?
Not football.
Built to win at video games.
They were built to beat the Houston Texans.
That's it. That's right.
So this is what it all comes down. This is their Super Bowl right now.
That's right. This is it. This is going to be the next Greg Camarillo from Cleo Lemon game.
Are they going to? Will they sweep the Jets? In your thoughts as of now,
sweep the Jets?
Are they going?
They might get swept by the Jets.
That's what I'm. Well, I think they'll split, but yeah. I mean, everyone says as we've sort of laughed about, this is a soft part of the schedule. Soft for who? Because the Giants are they're on the same level as Miami. Houston most weeks puts up a fight, and they'll put up a fight most weeks. If they put up a bunch of points, I have no faith Miami can keep up with them. And I know you're saying, well, who's their quarterback? Exactly. Who's their quarterback? You got we got? The Jets twice. Sam Darnold. I mean,
Mike White. We're going up against Mike White. We're going up against, I think Tyrod Taylor is supposed to be back.
Supposed to, yeah. I mean,
we're either up against Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills. And then we're up against we got Sam Darnold. We got Mike White.
I mean, it's like
Daniel Jones. We got coming up on the old
part of the schedule. And I don't know if we're gonna, like I said, win more than 2 more games this year.
Yeah, it's a bad deal. Anyway, the Dolphins are tortured. We're going on and on and on about the Dolphins. We're just in a bad place. We're in a dark place with this team right now because listen, it's just a mess. We're at our wits' end. You know why? Because at the end of the day, they remain the same old Dolphins. So, listen, we didn't do any of the ad reads today. We sort of jumped right into it. It happens from time to time. We forget to do any of the reads. Go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code Dolphins Talk. You'll save 20% off. You get free shipping. You have clean balls. It's a beautiful thing. Go to betus.com. Use the promo code Dolphins Talk. Get 125% sign up bonus. You can use that to do all of your legal online gambling when you can, decide whether or not the Dolphins are going to cover, whether the Dolphins are going to.
They're 7-point favorites this week after we just trashed them for an hour. They should be 7-point favorites against anybody. But they're 7-point. If you bet Miami -7, you must not like money.
This week is going to be the triumphant return. It's been a few weeks off of Pick 6 with David Behrman, but we're going to be back this Friday on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about whether or not Myles Gaskin is going to hit his player prop over this week, whatever they set that as for his rushing total. He goes every on 1 week, off 1 week, and so it was a down week last week in Buffalo. So he's gonna probably hit the over this week against a Houston team that is just feckless defensively, which is really weird to say as a fan of the Miami Dolphins. But here we are. So anyway, Mike, you got any plugs that you want to get in here before we wrap up this episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show?
Just go to the website dolphinstalk.com each and every day. We have new articles, so many podcasts. I can't even name them all. Just keep checking out the site. I know after today, the Watson rumor stuff will start to obviously slow down a little bit, but it's not going away. But I'm sure there's going to be videos and reports and articles that are still going to be out there. We're going to talk about the Houston game on a bunch of these shows. So just keep checking that out. And of course, go to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel and smash that like button.
Smash it. Smash it. Don't just, and turn on notifications so you find out when we go live.
Too, yep.
Turn that on. Turn that on. Brain, you got anything you want to plug here?
Yeah, well, obviously you can follow me on Twitter. Obviously, go to the website, dolphinstalk.com. I just want to leave with some parting words. The last thing that I want to say about this Deshaun Watson thing, really for the rest of the season, because I don't think there's any real need to talk about it, at least until we get to the off season. If there's, because I'm sure it'll, get brought up then, and then we'll actually have a reason to discuss it again. But football aside, the whole, innocent until proven guilty thing, 22 credible accusations. The Dolphins should have never been going after this guy. They should have never been this deep into the negotiations. At the end of the day, you should believe at least some of the accusations. When there's 22 of them, you should be believing them, and you should at least entertain the idea that it is true, that it happened. And when there's 22 credible accusations, there is way too much smoke for there to not be fire, just like there was way too much smoke for there to not be fire when reporters were coming out every week and saying that the Dolphins were in fact still trading for this guy. So this organization needs to look itself in the mirror. It starts at the top with Stephen Ross. They are morally bankrupt right now, and we need class to be brought back to this organization. As embarrassing as today was because of the way everything unfolded, at the end of the day, you could still take solace in this. The Dolphins did not trade for a sexual predator today. And at the end of the day, as much as they really tried to, they really, really tried to. And so that really kind of dampens the fact that it should be a good thing that they didn't make this move. But at the end of the day, we don't need to root for Deshaun Watson on Sunday. And that makes it a little bit easier to be a fan of this franchise, although it is still very difficult at this point.
It really is. It truly is. But to echo what the Brain said, believe survivors. Believe them. And thank you for listening to the Same Old Dolphins Show. We will talk to you again next time. Take care of yourselves and each other. Go Dolphins.